The news of the day is that we all were expecting. I think that when you went to bed yesterday in Indonesia and when we were to bed here in Bangkok, we were waiting to wake up and Trump has nuked Iran based on his statements. But now seems that there are 2 weeks of ceasefire between Iran and United States and Israel, and this pumped Bitcoin price over 71,000. What are your takes on that?
It's not that the Bitcoin price pumped, right? This news just triggered the whole market up. Bitcoin is one more asset. In fact, I don't know exactly the timing, what it was, but when I was checking stock market before going to bed, everything was down the hill in a very, very bad way. When I wake up, everything was up. I think Nasdaq in after hours went like 2.5% up, which is really a lot to a movement like that in a few hours. Triggered obviously also by the price of oil going down. So I think in the case of this, what was leading? It was leading oil price, then the rest of the stock market, then Bitcoin is one more asset over there will pump until 72K.
Yes. What are your takes, Marco?
Yeah, I think again we should not take for granted what Trump is posting in any of the social, because as we know it's probably quite the opposite of what he texts. What's the reality? I think again it's like a big advantage for the close circle of people close to the president, because again I think it's one of the most corrupted kind of situation, especially for financial markets, is insider trading at best. So if you have this kind of information like 1 hour in advance, you can make literally millions or hundreds of millions of dollars just by clicking a couple of buttons. But yeah, for like normal people like us, I think again everything he says is like either not real or overstated. And again, market are very nervous sometimes, and so we can see these price swings on almost everything. But again, the fundamentals on Bitcoin never changed, never will change because of a president or because some behavior of some states. So again, I think happily we didn't wake up with nuclear bomb over any country, which I think is positive. And the price pump, so again, it's or I mean, went a bit higher. It's great. But yeah, what I would like to see from Bitcoin, especially, is that we now start maybe to have this reversion and try to consolidate more the 70 range, because again, it's just one price pump, and in 2 3 days we can still be at 68 again with another price dump. So I think we are not yet out of any trouble yet, but I think the time is working in our favor. So the more we can sustain those levels, and the more the volume and the more the demand and offer and the people start to trade at this range, and even with bad news Bitcoin is not going down, yeah, then we start to see the bottom formation and then the price reversion to the higher side. So
Yes. Now, right now, the price of Bitcoin is 71,723. So it reminds. Remember, I think you said that yesterday it touched 72,700.
Yeah, I think 1,000 up all the way, and it's also showing the resistance of Bitcoin even in this stress environment, right? If we stand the level of 60K, which I think it was the bottom in the middle of wars events, then nothing else could push Bitcoin down. I mean, what else can go wrong that haven't been wrong already in the last 6 years, right? Every single event that can go wrong went wrong. So I don't know what else could be heavier than this.
Yeah.
And we are born literally.
Yeah, and on that point, I think Tom Lee, which again I'm losing a bit faith on his commentary sometimes because of the Bitmine and the Ethereum saga, but especially for the macro side, I think is pretty solid, and always someone that we should pay attention to. He said that after COVID, so with COVID and after 2020, markets digested already 7 sigma events, which are like let's say kind of black. In the past we should have called them like black swan events. More or less it's one every year, or maybe even more than one per year. And again, Bitcoin is still there. Bitcoin didn't nuke to 10k like McGlones and other people on Bloomberg or on Twitter are trying to fomenting to fads and program on Bitcoin. So I think it's very resilient, and yes, I think what should go wrong from here? Yeah, maybe it's the escalation of the war, or maybe China invading Taiwan in concomitant, all together with these other bad geopolitical news. But I think it should be better from here onwards. And also in May we have the Fed chair, so probably markets will still wait the first speech of Kevin Walsh and to see how it will unfold with the strategy of the Fed for the next years.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect on that, because last year Fed dropped the interest rate 3 times, and we saw. I think that all is affected by the geopolitical tensions that we are in a. I think that since Trump started tweeting after taking power, we live in a whole uncertainty. Like one day he says something, the other day he says the opposite. Now we apparently are in a 2-week ceasefire and negotiations period, but who knows? Maybe tonight Trump tonight in Asia come with another tweet and says, I don't know, whatever, and everything is down the hill again. So let's see what is going on, what can happen. But I want to point some stuff related to the Bitcoin treasury companies, some activities that have been happening this week. Let me share the slides so we all can discuss together what we have for today. And here we are. Strategy buys another 4,871 Bitcoin, coming back to work after a week. Strategy announced a new purchase. Now they held a total amount of 766,970 Bitcoin. They are on the way to 1 million. So I think that Diego was expecting this value. I don't know you, Marco.
Yeah, maybe even more, to be honest, to see Stretch being almost over par with the volumes. But I think there is more capital, but they just deployed the portion raised from Stretch and not also the portion from MSTR, because if we see the 8K filings, they raised, I think, 330 million alone from Stretch and 144 million from MSTR. And if we see the data here, they just deployed the 330 million from Stretch. So maybe they have the amount from MSTR for a dividend obligation or from some other stuff that for me wasn't totally clear. But yeah, I was expecting even a bit more. But again, we see that the amount is crazy. It's more, close to 5,000. And it's still in line with the 7K per week that we discussed in the other episodes. So yes, if the pace will remain the same, the 1 million is... let's say it's possible, very, very complex, but it's still possible. So, yeah, the strategy is not stopping.
Yeah, don't forget that part of the money raised through Stretch or MSTR is also being used to pay dividends, right? One thing is the 2.25 billion that is there just for the showing, just for someone to consider it as a sign of goodwill to pay in the future, but it's not. It doesn't look like the operational part of paying dividends. It's just for the show. But at the same time, they are having to pay every month this dividend, which is probably around 80 million per month or something like that. We can do the math later. So week after week, part of the money raised most of the part goes to buy Bitcoin, and a little part goes to pay the dividends. So I think that's the part that is not clear in the disclosement.
Yes, probably is that. And on the other side, I didn't add to the presentation today, but I saw there was a tweet on Monday that strategy is just 15,000 Bitcoin away to surpass BlackRock on the biggest Bitcoin holder. So probably it happen next week or during April, but they are soon to surpass BlackRock as the biggest Bitcoin holder.
Coming in April.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think that when BlackRock launched ETF, a lot of people were saying that strategy will be completely irrelevant because they consider back in 2024 strategy like an ETF, which is as they show us over the last 2 years is far from it. And so seeing that now they are accelerating much faster than the rate of accumulation from BlackRock and its clients is pretty compelling. It's telling us that this business model is working. This business model is very strong, even in bear markets, and that what Saylor, Fong Lee, and the management team engineered is a very solid, well-balanced machine that can perform in all market structure, in all situation, with bad geopolitics, with high interest rate, with a war coming, or with all possible scenario, even in liquidity. So again, I think it's the market test that strategy surpassed that with very high grades.
Yes, and to those who were thinking that strategy was a Bitcoin ETF, is because they didn't understand how it works. What I like to say is you have the ETF that is like having Bitcoin without having your keys. For the people who wants to get the exposure to the real volatility of Bitcoin, but they don't want to hold the keys or they cannot because they are a company and they cannot buy Bitcoin spot, the ETF is their instrument. Then you have strategy stock, MSTR, is like putting, how do you say?
It's Bitcoin on steroids.
It's Bitcoin on steroids. It's like when you do leverage, is using leverage, but without the risk of being liquidated. And on the other side, you have stretch, that is brand new. That is, if you don't want to get any exposure to the volatility, and you want to have a fixed income and not the fixed income that banks give you, that is cheap. So they are totally different instruments. Let's go to the other slide. That is another slide that comes from Bitcoin Archive that say strategy is buying hard on the way to 1 million in 2026. They already bought 2.2x of all the mined Bitcoin in 2026.
Yeah, it's technically on the way. It's possible now. Before it was just speculation that it could be done. I think now the odds of getting there are very high. I don't know if this could be a poll for Polymarket. But yeah, seems like it's gonna be done.
Yes, and also the number of that they already bought in the first quarter, the mine of 2.2 years. So this is incredible.
And also shows that these purchases of Bitcoin in the range of, let's say, 10,000 per week or something like that, doesn't affect the price in the short term at all. It doesn't move the needle, which is also weird because all these companies go to OTC desk to buy Bitcoin to not move the price. But I think even if they could buy 10,000 Bitcoin in Binance, the price will not flinch. The price movement effectively will be there, but as an accumulation of week after week after week after week for a couple of years. But it's not reflected in the day after or in the same moment when the purchase are made. The same way when we have this bad news fad, like a big whale sold 30,000 Bitcoin. Now we're going down to hell. Actually, these numbers don't affect the price.
Yeah, last week we saw that Mara sold more than 15,000 Bitcoin. Also, Riot sold around 4,000 Bitcoin, and the price hasn't been affected. The Bitcoin price is affected by geopolitical things. So that's what
Yeah,
we
but
saw as all the rest of the financial market.
In the short term,
In the short term.
always have to differentiate between short-term prediction and long term. Long term is the power law. The power law is the DNA of Bitcoin. It will show you in a time frame of 8 years. That is the trend. It's undeniable. In the short term, that seller buys 30,000 Bitcoin in Binance in one click, I bet it will not move the price more than 0.5%.
yeah, because again, as we always say, Bitcoin is the most liquid. Probably it's among the top liquid asset, and it trades on average between 20, 30, 40 billion dollars every day. So again, even if Marathon or as you said, Fernando, Riot as well sold a portion of their Bitcoin for probably capex expenditure for some other internal expense, which again for the miners is more acceptable because it's part of the business model. Again, it won't change nothing. 15,000 Bitcoin is like can be traded on Binance probably in 2 minutes without much. No, maybe not 2 minutes, but let's say a few hours. And Binance is just one exchange, and maybe the price will just go down for like 0.0 something. It's completely, irrelevant. So the volume that Bitcoin today trade is order of magnitude larger. So even if strategy sell part of their Bitcoin, it will be not because of the demand and offer. It will more be about the sentiment of why strategy will sell the Bitcoin that create this panic, but not because of the selling itself. And on the other side, on the buying side, is the same. The seller doesn't want to move the price, or anybody wants to move the price to the high. If you need to buy a lot, you would be stupid. So, and I think they said it multiple times. Yeah,
it's also a little bit contradictory because in general, right, when you want to buy an asset, you don't want to go with a big chunk altogether, so you don't move the price, so you don't end up paying more. But think about it. In this case of Bitcoin, when you have a finite asset, you actually do want to move it up because you're buying, maybe you're paying a little bit more expensive, but also you are helping long term to move your own stack up. It's opposite what it could be in traditional finance. If you are doing that against an asset that is not finite, then obviously it doesn't make sense to buy a whole chunk altogether, so you end up paying more. But when there is a finite asset, maybe it's even better to buy all in one shot in Binance and just push the price up. But anyways, it's not happening because it's not as you mentioned, the volume is around 50, 60, 70 billion per day.
yeah. Someday we have exceeding 50. So what's the point of saying that one seller can move the price? It's completely idiotic. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and on the other side, I like to point this 2.2x because, as you mentioned, as you showed us a couple of weeks ago, during the 2022 bear market, strategy, we used to buy 152 in average Bitcoin per week. Now they are buying more than 7,000. In the middle of a huge correction, in the middle of a war, in the middle of Trump tweeting a lot of bullshit, in the middle of a lot of FUD saying that Saylor was gonna be forced to sell their BTC. So that is another proof of the resilience and the strength of strategy.
That conversation reminds me something, just a little reminder of what happened in 2020 when Tesla was buying Bitcoin. At some point, it came up as a news on Twitter, Tesla sold Bitcoin. And then Elon said, oh, don't worry, we were just testing liquidity. And I think it was a very short amount, something like $1 million. So the point is that in 2020, people didn't even know that this is possible, that Bitcoin is actually liquid enough for big corporations to move a lot of millions of dollars in one shot. So it reminds me that Elon actually tested Bitcoin liquidity at that time, and it was a much lower amount.
Yes. So let's
And
move to
maybe
the yes.
maybe Fernando, before moving, because before Diego said if we had the information on Polymarket, maybe I can share my screen quickly
Yes.
because I found the poll.
Let me come back here. Yes.
So yeah, actually there are two open poll on Polymarket. So more than 800,000 by year end is a 97%. So the market is telling us that strategy is like almost certain to have more than 800,000 BTC by 31st December 2026, which kind of makes sense because as of today they have 767,000. So it's only 30,000 Bitcoin left. For the 1 million is 29, which it's I think more or less in line with what we should expect. Much higher than 10%, probably still very complex because if Bitcoin price start to rise and maybe you have other situation that might change or liquidity, maybe they need to slow down a bit the pace, or I mean it can be still uncertain, but 29% to me is pretty high. Telling that the market maybe is changing a bit the idea on strategy, and again it's tiny because it's only $43,000, so it's not very liquid or a big market enough to have any prediction, but it's 30% above 1 million and 97 above 800k.
I think the number makes sense. 30% for 1 million as odds to be achieved when you still have 6 months ahead. No, more than 6.
No, more like
8 months.
9 months ahead.
Almost 9, yeah.
So it's a lot of
Please, we
uncertainty.
just started 2026, Diego. Don't rush it too much.
Yeah, no.
But it just started, and I think that we lived through five different years.
It looks like we got older these few months.
Yeah, true.
So can I share? Excellent. So let
Yeah.
me share. Come back to this. Next. Well, that's the big news, I think. More than if they are buying Bitcoin or whatever, the big news is how Stretch is performing. 5 days in a row, ATM volume for Stretch. STRC does not stop accumulating.
Yeah.
Also,
And I
the same dynamic, which is it was actually literal at like 99, 95, and 100. So the volatility compressed to literally zero for the last 5 days in the middle of the most extreme environment.
Taylor posted the tweet, two tweets, and it's like one was 99.99 and 100.01. So it's like 2-3 cents for 2 consecutive days. So pretty impressive.
Yes, I can go to the next one. That is probably the same. What Saylor said, right? Is working as designed in the middle of a. What we need to understand on that is that I don't want to call it a bear market, but a huge correction, like 50% correction. We have a lot of global tensions. And to be honest, yesterday night when I went to sleep, there were odds that Trump drops a nuclear bomb on Iran. It was not like it's impossible. And even though the market had started, I think that 300 million wiped out in the first 30 minutes, something like that, was something crazy. And even though in the middle of all of this, Stretch was still on par. So that's the amazing part of this instrument.
And I think it's in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be even stronger because it comes the, how's it called? The cut date for when investors can get in to get the dividend and then get out in the last week. So that will increase the demand in the next weeks.
Yeah, and I think again the superiority of Stretch also compared to the other preferred, both internally to strategy, but also externally compared to SATA, because SATA I think now is trading. It was trading at par 100 a couple of days ago. Stretch is still perfectly on par for like almost the whole week last week, and I would assume this week as well could also be pretty strong at 100. Say that now is trading 97.5, I think. So again, it's more volatile because again, as we know, the balance sheet of Strive is much smaller than the balance sheet of Strategy. The seniority of the year of dividend that the company have are a bit different, and again, Stretch is more seasoned as an instrument compared to SETA, so probably that's why SETA depeg a bit to 100, whereas Stretch is very, very stable.
Also, it's a function of the trading volume, right? SETA, I think it's less than, it's just, I don't think it's 1 million. It's less than the millions, the trading volume.
Yeah.
So also that's a function of the volume on the way down and the way up. So the same way as it goes from 100 to 97, it can go faster from 97 to 102 if the trading volume increase substantially.
Yeah, and that's also why it makes sense that SETA is paying more higher interest rate than Stretch, because otherwise the normal investor would buy Stretch. So if you want to go a bit further on the risk curve, accept a bit more volatility on the instrument and less guarantee from the balance sheet or the liquidity, you can buy SETA, and it pays, I think, 120 basis point more. So I think that's why.
And in the meantime, other companies showing interest on Stretch. Apix, I think that is a DeFi platform or something, buys another 50,000 shares of Stretch, holding now 450,000 in total.
Well, it totally makes sense for companies to get this, right? It's the same happened with the Strive. Strive get Stretch for making the balance sheet stronger or more predictable.
Yeah, and by the way, this is the way that Bitcoin increased the market cap and increased the price, right? With big money coming to instruments backed by Bitcoin instead of people using it in a circular economy.
Yeah, and again, it's maybe 1,000 times easier to convince a board member in a private company or in a public company to add to the balance sheet a security which is kind of stable, or it's like let's call it with this very little volatility that pays you a pretty high interest rate, rather than go to the full exploration of putting Bitcoin on your balance sheet. So it's order of magnitude simpler to just say to your board, look, we have this cash aside based on our operation. We need, I don't know, maybe only 20% for extreme conditions. So the rest we can just put it on Stretch, rather than putting on Bitcoin, which is like much more volatile, and you need to convince everybody inside the company, your shareholder, and that can be against it, because again, as we know, majority of shareholder in companies and the board are like old generation, old school. So Stretch is a great Trojan horse that can just enter inside balance sheet, backed by Bitcoin, but giving a much more stable and less volatile outcome, which maybe for some companies much better and easier than putting Bitcoin directly. But yes, ultimately it's good for Bitcoin, it's good for Strategy and for the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, because this Apix didn't buy Bitcoin with this money, but Strategy bought. So that's the point.
Also, because of the financial strength of the balance sheet, right? We only, how much is now? 10% is the debt.
Yes, something like that.
Let's check it out again.
Sorry again, Diego?
The debt on the balance sheet is around 10% still?
I think if you count debt and preferred, a bit higher.
11%.
11%. Yes, I was checking some numbers yesterday on Coca-Cola, because actually Linandel mentioned it on a podcast. So I was checking the numbers. Coca-Cola has around 45% of liabilities, and it's Coca-Cola, right? One of the oldest companies you can think about. And they've been but one of the biggest instruments that they incorporate into the balance sheet is some kind of instrument. I don't know if it is a preferred stock or what in particular, but they pay something like 3%. And the way Leonardo explained it, it's just a short bet on the fiat system, because with that money they can either buy back the stock, they can do whatever, they can finance any investment they have, they can finance acquisitions to get fiat dollars to lower interest rate that they will have in the market. So someone asks why Coca-Cola cannot pay the debt. It's not that they cannot pay the debt. They don't need to. They don't want to, because it's financially better to increase the debt in this case.
Yeah.
So, but when this is point out to strategies, look as a negative thing, even though the ratio is way lower than most traditional companies.
Yeah.
That's the point. And the next one is Stripe buys 113 BTC. Now is the 9th company with most Bitcoin hold. Another point that other companies still buy Bitcoin despite the ones that are selling.
Yeah, I mean, especially for them, it was pretty quick, the whole process, after also incorporating Semler. They've done a lot of things in short period of time, because again, doing an M&A plus launching the preferred plus going to top 10 on the balance sheet, it's pretty remarkable. And again, Seita now it's very close to the peg, similarly to Stretch, even though it's much smaller, less liquidity, less Bitcoin, much smaller company. But they also have done a lot of other stuff in the meantime. So for sure, we should say that again, people working for the Bitcoin treasury space are working pretty hard, and they put the face where the mouth is. And again, the market sometimes don't recognize the effort, but I think overall the industry held pretty strongly and very unite overall. And I think it's great. Once Bitcoin will be out of the woods, and once we will have more clarity from the geopolitical situation, and maybe a more easing cycle from central banks or for private banking, yeah, I think would be pretty interesting.
Yes. So Marco, you wanted to share something with us?
The chart of the debt,
Yes.
global debt. And I don't know, I posted like a couple of days ago, and today I just reopened and I saw a quite different number for the United States, meaning that the wars in general are probably the most expensive and inflationary things that can possibly happen. Because here was the 3rd of April, and the screenshot I took was 39 trillion and 70 billion in just 4 days. Let me share the new screen. Literally in just 72 hours, they had 20 billion. Which again, people say, yeah, the war is costing around 1 billion every day. Yes, this particular war between US and Iran, then they are involved in supporting Ukraine, then they are involved with so many other things internally. In 72 hours, the US debt increased by 20 billion. So again, for sure, this one will never stop. The famous Lynn Alden, quote. The train won't stop, and also Bitcoin won't stop, because it's the mirror of the fiat system. So if those numbers will keep increasing in all economies at even a faster rate, yeah, for sure, Bitcoin will at some point monetize and run faster than them.
Yeah, nothing stops this train, as she said, and it's also a function of right, because you have the government spending side of the things,
Yeah.
which obviously in the middle of the war they will be probably creating again money out of nowhere to finance the war. But on the other hand, don't forget that we are in this fractional reserve banking system, which literally prints money for every deposit you make. So this number will keep going up. And also, it's the fact that you have to, every time you create this new money out of nowhere, you are creating the interest part of that, which also doesn't exist. So the interest part that is going to be popping out in the future also needs to be created. It's not coming out of more work, it's not coming out of more production, it's coming out of more money printing globally. I mean, not only the Fed. So yeah, it's a clear demonstration of this is the more polite Ponzi scheme ever created.
Yes, completely agree. But just in 72 hours, 20 billion US, like 3 billion
it's
a
pretty
day.
impressive.
No, sorry, 7 billions a day. Well, the other day, I think that we shared in our Spanish show today that they have just injected 7.4 billion.
There you have it.
So
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and again, those numbers are, I mean, should be live. I mean, kind of close to live data from this website. It's pretty accurate, and again, it's very scary when you see these numbers. And again, a few episodes ago, we just discussed that in 2020 the total debt was 24 trillion, I think, and today it's already 39 trillion. So this thing is moving so quickly that it's almost impossible even to believe, and that's why maybe we can connect my last point. Maybe this chart, which is the S&P 500, and we put in a linear scale, it seems stupid, this chart. But it is not stupid. It's simply telling us that the monetary base and how the debt is created and how the system works, they are forced to keep it rolling over and keep pushing to more money printing, to more support. Otherwise, everything will collapse. And if you let the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, and all the major US indexes to correct, I don't know, 60% or 70%, the US economy is so linked and intertwined with these benchmarks that it will be a catastrophe for retiree, catastrophes for company itself, catastrophe for literally everybody. And so they cannot allow this. They cannot allow this natural, let's say, transition. And so they need somehow to keep this bubble getting bigger. Because again, this chart seems wrong, but it's not.
Yeah, the thing is, I still see a couple of way outs. They are a little bit naive, but I think they might be possible. One way out could be that artificial intelligence actually can help produce more than it took. Then it creates a deflationary environment, and eventually it helps with this transition. But at the same time, I'm worried that politicians in the middle of this transition can fuck up the system again. The other element that might help is Bitcoin itself. So if Bitcoin gets into the veins of this financial system slowly, it's not going to be a shock. It's not going to be one day to another day. It's going to be gradually going through the financial market. That's why for us it's so important that companies get involved in this. Eventually, the financial market gets renormalized. Instead of being measured NVIDIA as 5 trillion US dollar, it's measured as, I don't know, 1 million Bitcoin, whatever it is. Measure the stock market in Bitcoin terms. Eventually, when that transition happens, the whole financial system maybe gets reabsorbed into a Bitcoin new financial system. And that's why maybe it can clean up the debt. I'm not pretty sure about that, but these might be the only two ways that I see a way out. Otherwise, the solution that the system is already creating is just to roll it over and keep growing faster. The problem is that it's becoming that hockey stick. When you extrapolate into decades, you can see it as the way you show it on that graph. Because if you just see like 4 years ago, yeah, it's going up, but it's just a line. You don't pay attention. Now, when you zoom out to 100 years, you realize this is crazy. It cannot be sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully the audience, our audience, I'm pretty sure they are pretty deep into Bitcoin. So I think today is the best option for the average person to have a lifeboat, to have something that is uncorrelated with this madness, is to have Bitcoin. Because again, I see Bitcoin as a saving technology and as a mirror to the traditional financial system. The more the traditional financial system, the debt go crazy, the better for the people who wants Bitcoin, because it's on the other side of this equation. So I would buy more the second theory, Diego, rather than the first one, because I'm not sure if this. I think AI will be an amazing technology, but again, as we see in this capitalistic structure over the last 30 years, it will probably centralize even more the economic power and the money itself on the capital. Because let's assume that in 1 year, those model will charge a lot of money, because at some point they need to find a way to charge money, because they cannot give it for free or for pennies. At some point they need to monetize on the users. And the users now, after years of using ChatGPT, of using cloud and the others one, now by the day we become dumber, because we cannot even do basic reasoning, because we ask ChatGPT, we ask Claude, which again, it's an amazing tool, but it's an amazing tool if it's for free. If they force you or a new generation to use this tool, and then in 1, 2, 3 years they charge a lot of money, again there will be a lot of movement from normal people to those monopolies. So again, I'm not sure AI by itself can deflate out also the debt. I think Bitcoin needs to play a key role, much bigger than the mainstream media and the general investor have in mind.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Anyways, yeah, my point is not that they will survive on charging fees to the users like that. Remember, another comparison with this could be when the telecommunication companies start doing SMS. At the beginning, they charge you per SMS, then they charge you per minute, to a point that it was crazy. So you have to fight to get these plans to have 3 minutes of talks plus 500 SMS. Remember this time? It looks crazy. It looks like, how can you scale in that system? Well, at the end of the day, it wasn't scaling like that. Eventually now, SMS are not free, but I mean it's widely cheaper, and
almost
it becomes
obsolete.
infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think AI will become a commodity at the end of the day. It would be like energy or telecommunications or the internet. So it's not going to be a need for users to pay something like that. And if we need to pay, it would be something like paying the cable TV.
Yes.
Yeah, but then how can we justify $2 trillion valuation for a company that gives everything for? I mean, they need to monetize somewhere else. So it means that
Sure.
1 billion users gave access to everything. So that you don't pay, but you give access to all your photo, all your text, or your all devices, or your medical records, or your time on the screen, everything. So I would prefer to pay and have a better system rather than have it for free and then I am the product. But again, at some point, they need to monetize very heavily, because the capex expenditure and the valuation of those companies are insane. They went from almost non-existent in 2021 to multi-trillion today. So yeah, I agree that the trend is this one, but I'm also afraid that at some point, if you want to have the best model for a specific industry, maybe there will be also a component of paying, which I think is fair, because otherwise, if you don't pay, the product is you, and at this point people will completely sell everything for having this tool for free, which again, maybe it's even scarier for me.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same paradox that happened with social media, right? At the beginning, it was supposed to be
Sure.
it was supposed to be for free, but then eventually they find out a way to monetize it, and in fact, they monetize it in a big way. So I think that's not a concern. The thing is how the higher efficiency of AI in corporations can translate into a more prosperous society, or if it will translate into more inequality, because the money can get concentrated in bigger hands or something like that. That's the part that I don't know, but the trend, there is no way that is going other way than that. It's for me, it's crystal clear that it's going to be that way.
Yeah, maybe just to close with a positive notes, for people who already have a lot of Bitcoin or a big sizable amount of their wealth in Bitcoin and having the chance to use this amazing technology almost for free, that's, I think, the win-win scenario that is going to work out for the next 10 years. If you only rely on one side, and again, if you only rely on AI, I think you're doomed, because Bitcoin, you need to have Bitcoin on a foundation. Your deepest layer of wealth, then even if AI goes to the wrong path or it becomes a bit more obscure or problematic, still you have the foundation on Bitcoin that can save you. But I think, yeah, it needs to be a combination, and the combination should be heavily oriented to Bitcoin. So I would that's how I would see the future for the normal guy, just to try to escape this madness, having Bitcoin and use this technology.
Having assets, especially Bitcoin, which is the best one.
Yes. So, Marco, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
And see you probably in a couple of days to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah. Let's try to. Yeah, I'm writing something. I don't want to tell you yet, but yes, I will. We can have maybe the recording on the weekend and discuss some more Bitcoin topics together. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for being with us. To the people who is on the other side, if you like the episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, follow us on social media, follow our guests on social media. That is...
Sorry?
Your social media.
My social media, sorry. Battistoshi93 on Twitter.
Excellent, because doing so, you help us a lot to paint the world orange. Share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because we must reach 8 billion people and give them the orange pill. See you in the next episode. Stay humble.